Welcome back. Today we're going to tie a traditional Baetis dry fly. This is typically the first hatch that you'll see throughout the year, the first mayfly, the first major hatch, I guess you would say. Typically the first and the last, honestly, because you get a good fall Baetis as well. But then they're sprinkled, I mean, depending on which river you're fishing, they're sprinkled throughout the year, really, probably starting as early as March in some places. And then you'll see them, you'll get some smaller ones in the summer. You'll get some pseudos, August, September time frame, and then typically October is when you'll get a second big hatch of Baetis. But this is just a good fly to have year-round. Really, it is. I mean, you just never know when you're going to run into these. Cloudy days seem to be the best too, but I mean, honestly, for me, any more cloudy days, I'm ripping the big bugs down through there. But I mean, it's still fun to fish and catch fish on dry flies, and it's still fun to tie them as well. So we're gonna go ahead and get into this one. Like I said, this is a Baetis dry. This is just gonna be a standard, and this is the one that I keep in my boxes more so than not. I will fancy some up. I'll do some cripples. I'll do some stuff with maybe some Z-Lon or something with a little bit of flash in there. But for the most part, I stay pretty traditional on these and go with just the standard dry. So we're going to just build a thread base there, and I need to loosen that bobbin up a little bit. It's a little tight on me. There we go. We're just going to set that in, and then I want to go with a tail section first. I'm just going to grab some, this is just a done hackle here. I'm going to take a piece, I don't know, I'm going to get 4 to 6 strands and get those nice and evened out. I'm not going real heavy on this tail, and then I want it about 1 1/4 times the length of my hook. So I'm just going to get that tied in, get my tail set in place, and then I'm going to run that through. There you can see there's about the length of our tail. It's a little bit spread out and everything right there. And the nice thing with doing this, when you take probably that 4 to 6 strands, it's going to kind of give you that effect of a splayed out tail without actually having to go in there and work all the way through and do all the work to get it to sit like that. And it's also going to serve the purpose of just catching enough water to keep that fly riding properly. I know when I was growing up, Cabela's magazines and I think Fly Tire magazine and all that was about my only avenue outside of going to shops to be able to see different types of dry flies. And I know some of those commercial ones, the tails on those dang things, they were so thick it looked like they had half of a dang hackle on there for fibers. And that's the way I wound up tying a lot of my stuff to begin with, and it just I found it to be unnecessary. As I got older and everything and really started getting into the flies a lot more than just what's on the picture and then seeing how they act on the water and everything. But keeping those tails nice and sparse really helps the fly out a lot. You get the profile that you're after without using a ton of material, and you still get the functionality of it as well. I'll still go through every once in a while, and I'll fork the tails out and everything, just to break up the monotony of tying the same thing over and over. But for all intents and purposes, that's the way that I tie the majority of them. So I just set that on there. Now we're going to go with our wings here. I want to find a good section. This is Snowshoe Rabbit. If you've watched any of my dry fly stuff before, you know that I swear by this stuff. It's got a natural buoyancy to it, easy to work with. It's easy to tie in. It gets you a good wing section. This is a little bit on the lighter side than what I typically like to work with, but I'm just going to take a chunk of this. That's definitely a little bit lighter. It says it's a medium done. It looks like the dye didn't quite get all the way down there, but I just want to clean this stuff up a little bit, and I always tie these in from the tips. So I'm just cleaning this stuff up. There's some fibers down through there that'll wind up adding more bulk than anything, and it winds up being pretty difficult to work with. So I just get rid of some of those. I still get that nice little plume for a wing case that I'm after, and I don't have, like I said before, a ton of bulk. Now I've got just a few fibers here that are going to be a little bit on the long side. I want to tie these in from the tips first. So from the tips, and I want to advance that back just one more. I'm going to use these wings as part of my taper for the body. So I'm just going to go with one wrap right over the top here. I'm capturing my snowshoe rabbit, and then as I'm going back, it's going to make this taper for me. It's automatically going to build a taper. I had that spin on me a little bit, so what I want to do is come up and catch some bear hook right there. Just kind of stand that stuff up, and then work my way to the back, right to where I tied in my tail. There we go. We've got a nice taper sitting right through there now as it sits without doing anything. All we did was tie in our tail first. We tied our wings in tip first and then brought those back, and it gave us that nice natural taper that we're after on these dry flies. Now, I did forget to mention that I'm going to tie this as a quill body. I have some quills sitting here. These are natural quills. I have them sitting in water. If you're going to tie with some quills, make sure that you put them in some water first. Don't tie with them dry. They'll wind up snapping on you and making a pretty good mess. So I'm going to tie this as a quill today. These are some of my favorite patterns to tie and to work with. The quills are so resilient. You treat it with a little bit of zap before you tie these in or before you wrap them. They're dang near indestructible. Dang near indestructible. I love the overall look that you get from them. Cam's chewing on something over there. She probably shouldn't. Anyhow, we'll figure that out once we shut the camera off. But the look that you get, the natural segmentation that you get from these is really tough to beat. It really is. So I love tying with these quills. I love tying with the turkey biots and everything, the biot bodies. A lot of times too, I'll just go with the straight dubbing, but these quills are some of my favorite to work with. So now I just want to set that up, make sure that my wings are in the right spot, make sure I've got a good wing section right there. And then before I go wrapping the body, what I want to do is find a hackle here. Now on my dry fly hackles, this is a 16, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. This is on the bigger side that I will tie a Baetis. Typically, the 16 is probably the biggest that I will tie them. 18 to 20 are probably the more common ones that I'll tie and I'll fish. But we're going to do this on a 16. It's a little bit easier to see on the camera. So that being said, I'm tying this in a 16. I'm going to undersize my hackle. This is going to wind up being closer to an 18, probably in between a 16 and an 18, honestly. And I always undersize my hackle. On the traditional Catskill type dry flies, I always undersize my hackle. I just like the way that it rides in the water better. It gets me closer to the surface. I don't like a real high riding dry fly when it comes to these mayflies. And then I want to take just a little bit underneath there. And now I'm going to start standing up my wing case. I'm not going to upright and divide this. I'm going to have it just how it sits right there. There's a few stragglers that are inherent with these with this snowshoe rabbit. You got to fight with it just a little bit to get everything sitting how you want it, but that little bit of a struggle is well worth it, because like I said, this is my favorite wing material for a mayfly, hands down. It's just so tough to beat. The profile is great, natural buoyancy, all of that stuff. Really easy to make a nice wing set for your dry flies. So now I want that hackle out of the way. I'm just going to kind of stand that up a little bit. I'm going to go into some zap, and then I'm going to wrap my body here. I got a couple fibers sitting in the body. Alright, now I'm going to take just the smallest amount of zap, and I want to touch up my bottom section here. All I really want is just a little bit of glue on my body. There is not a ton on there. There's no gobs or anything, no big sections. Just enough to where it's going to catch this quill body as I'm wrapping it. And then as I'm wrapping this, I'm putting one right in front of the other. I tied it in on the tail section to start with. And then I'm just going one wrap right in front of the next, all the way up to my hackle where I have it tied in. And this is also going to help you with that natural taper, because as you get closer to the tie-in, or to the wings, your body, your quill body is getting thicker, so the stem's getting thicker and everything. It just makes a beautiful taper going up through here. And I'm taking that right to the wing case. You can see where that one started to split even after soaking there for quite some time. We're going to be all right though. We're going to be all right. I'm just going to take that section, trim that right off. Right on the last wrap, it started to split, but we're in good shape there. And you can see that body, that natural segmentation that you have, the natural taper that we didn't have to work for. All we had to do, we weren't building it up. When I was a kid, I used to build my tapers up with dubbing, and it wound up having like football bodies and everything. You've got a nice natural taper right there, just from how you tied your wings in and your tail. Those two meet together and you have a natural taper that sits there, and then you use the taper that's on the quill, and it's a perfect mayfly body. Now, one thing that I did forget to get out when I was prepping for this one was some dubbing, so I'm going to have to search through this here and find some dubbing. Shouldn't take too long. There we go. That's rabbit. I don't want rabbit dubbing. It may take longer than I expected. That'll work. That's like a gray olive. Not the perfect color, but I'm going to use so little of this that it's going to be covered up with the hackle and everything anyhow. So I just want to take a little bit of gray olive dubbing. Like I said, I'm not upright and dividing those wings. I'm just going to have them as they sit right there. I just want a little bit of dubbing to dub through my wings. It does two things for me. One, I don't have a bunch of white thread sitting through there. It adds to the taper that we already have, and it additionally stands my wings up a little bit more. You can see all the more that I used right there. And let me see there. One was just a little on the thick side. There we go. I wanted just a couple of wraps right in the front to help stand up my wings. I had a hair getting in the way. Now all I want to do, let me wet that rabbit down there. Now I'm going to take my Hackle. I think I can get away without Hackle pliers actually. I'm going to see how this goes. I just want to take my Hackle here. I make my Hackle wraps really sparse. Probably 2 to 3 on the front and back. I'm just going to take those 2 right there. I'm going right in front of my wings. 1, 2. Like I said, really sparse on my Hackle there. I don't want a ton of it in there. I don't want it really apparent. That was another thing that I saw another thing that I did as a kid a lot, was my Hackle was so thick because you would see it in these magazines and all that, and it was just, it looked great. I mean, but it was just so thick, and it wound up taking away from the fly a lot. All I want's the suggestional legs right there and that Hackle to help the fly float just a little bit. And that's the only thing that I'm really after. So now I'm going to turn this upside down. I was going to before the vise decided to go the other way. I just want to trim that Hackle off and not get my thread. There we go. And now, because I have big fat fingers, and it's sometimes pretty tough for me to whip finish on these smaller flies, I'm going to go ahead and use the tool here. 2, 3, and then I want just one more. 1, 2, and the only thing I need to do is clean up a couple stray fibers that are out there. And we've got a completed Baetis dry. Now, the quills that I used, let me find this package for reference. There we go. There's the quills that I use. It's a little bit more on the olive side than I would like it. Typically, for the Baetis, I'll go more so toward the gray than I will the olive. If I can get something subdued on the olive, I'll use that, but typically I like to use the gray more so than anything. I'll probably do a video. I have a turkey violet that's almost perfect for what I like to use. I'll probably do a video on that one here in a little bit as we get closer to spring and all that. I've got, no, we're good there. We're good. Last thing I need to do is just touch that white thread up a little bit. I'll just throw some tan right where I whip finished. And we've got a completed Baetis dry fly. Really quick, easy pattern to tie, really easy to get your tapers and everything to cooperate for you with those quill bodies. And like I said, those things will stick together for a long time. Just a little bit of zap underneath on the body, that thing will fish for quite some time for you without coming apart. So there is the Quill Bodied Baetis dry fly. If you guys have questions or comments, leave them with me and I'll get back to you. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll catch you on the next fly.